welcome back. I'm so excited about this episode. This is our very first group discussion featuring a few of my previous guests who come back to the episode to discuss the film Good Luck to You, Leo Grande. This film was written by Australian screenwriter Katy Brand, directed by Australian filmmaker Sophie Hyde, and stars Emma Thompson and Daryl McCormack. And you can watch this film on Hulu. Before we jump in, I want to issue a spoiler alert warning before you listen to this episode. Spoiler alert, spoiler alert. We do our best not to get too specific into the details of the film, but we do discuss a few plot points here and there during our discussion that resonated with us. So if you haven't had a chance to watch this wonderful film, a film I personally and wholeheartedly recommend, you might want to pause here, go check out the movie, and then come back and listen to it after you've had a chance to watch it. As I stated, this is our very, very first group conversation, and we have our guests joining from 5 different locations, 5 different time zones, and 2 different continents. And we worked really hard to overcome a few audio challenges we encountered during the episode, so be patient with that. But I am so happy to share this wonderful conversation with you. Once again, if you have not seen the film, this is your last warning for a few spoiler alerts. That's it. Here we go. Hi, everybody. Welcome back to the podcast. There's more to our story. I'm very excited about this episode. I am joined with some of my previous guests to have a group discussion about the recently released film called Good Luck to You, Leo Grande, starring Emma Thompson and Daryl McCormack. I'm thrilled that they're able to come back and share their thoughts about this. So without further ado, I'm going to ask each of my wonderful guests to sort of just tell a quick little reminder of who you are, where you're coming from, introduce yourselves, and I will say, I'll just start with Sandy Davies. Sandy Davies, tell us a little bit about yourself.
All right. Well, good day, everybody. It's lovely to be back here again. I'm coming to you from Eastern Guyalanji country, right up in the top end of Australia. So I'm up right where the Great Barrier Reef kisses the World Heritage listed Daintree Rainforest. So love my life in the tropics. Such a far cry from what I expected as a Kansas-born girl. And I have a balm for women in perimenopause going through cancer treatment that assists with intimate dryness. And something I never anticipated is I've kind of had a bit of a dream come true, and I'm at the very early stages of being an emerging writer and negotiating right now with a team for developing a screenplay. So quite excited how sometimes that second spring journey takes you where you never, ever anticipate. Always be open and say yes.
Excellent. Next up, hi, Cindy O'Neill. Why don't you tell us a little bit about yourself?
Hi, everybody. I'm Cindy O'Neill, and I am coming to you from the coast of Connecticut. And it's full-blown summer here, and it's glorious weather, and I'm sitting staring at the Atlantic Ocean out my window right now. So it's a great spot to be. And I just to put it in perspective, I'm a 1950s baby. So I am a wife, a mother of 4, a grandmother of 6. Well, tomorrow is the due date for my 6th grandbaby out in Ohio. I was retired in 2020, right before the pandemic hit in January of 2020, and had all kinds of great plans to travel, which my husband and I did for the first 3 months. And then everything shut down literally the minute we came home from Mexico. And then I was also volunteering for a nonprofit locally here in Connecticut, and really loved the work that I was doing. And it was to support folks who are living below the poverty line or who are victims of crime. And then lo and behold, in June, the CEO said, "Hey, our director of programs has left, and would you have any interest?" And I thought, well, what else am I doing? So I said yes. And now it'll be 2 years in September, and I absolutely love it. And I'm so pleased to be here to talk about this movie with all of you ladies.
Thanks, Cindy. Mariann Aalda.
Hi, I'm Mariann Aalda, and I am in Chicago at the moment, where where Lake Michigan kisses the concrete. That's Well, hi, Elisa. It's nice seeing you because we met how many years ago? Maybe 30 years ago in Daryl Hickman's acting class. It's great to see you. And Sandy Davies, it's great to see you because we met through Silver Sirens, I think. And then we followed up on LinkedIn, and I said, "You've got a great story to tell." And girl, you are now telling it. I'm really pleased to hear that. Now, let's see. What about me? I'm an actress, writer, producer, a hypnotherapist, and I consider myself to be a contempораger, looking for a name to call us boomers that's not senior or elder. I'm a contempораger because I am of the time and of the moment, and I am getting older. So I'm combining the two. I believe in changing the paradigm on women and aging, and that's what I work very hard at doing and this is why I'm so excited to be talking about this movie, because it really does some of the things that I've been fighting for, and I'd like to see more of it. And as an actress, I have a vested interest in it because I'd like to be doing more of it. So that's my deal. We'll talk more about stuff later.
Excellent. Okay, Eleni Kalakos coming in from Michigan.
Yes, I am in lovely Michigan, particularly Ann Arbor, Michigan. And I'm Eleni Kalakos, otherwise known as the Speaker Whisperer. I was for many, many years, and of course still am, deep down inside, an actress. And I morphed into being a singer and songwriter. And about 20 years ago, I hung up my shingle as a presence and presentation coach and trainer. And I use all those yummy things I learned as an actress to help business professionals be more relaxed and real when they give presentations. Really, what I'm doing is just trying to help people be more present. And really, what I'm doing at this point in my life is advocating for women in particular. As I age, this urge gets stronger. It's been like this my whole life, but I'm really wanting at this point in my life and putting my money where my mouth is and my words where my mouth is. We're trying to advocate for women to claim the stage, get out of the wings, move into the spotlight, use their words to change the world. And I just recently published a book called Claim the Stage, and I'm on my soapbox about this right now, especially in these years for me. I see the value of it, and I want to encourage women coming up in particular to leap, not just lean into leadership.
Bravo. Well, I am thrilled that you are all here. Such a cross section, and also none of you are shrinking violets. So if we have differing views or unique perspectives, you're all going to bring unique perspectives about this remarkable film. I was thrilled when I heard about it. I heard a little bit of buzz about it before it was released, so I kind of knew what was coming, and I sort of came up with the idea. So this is sort of always a long-term goal of mine, was to moderate a panel discussions about what's out there so we could get these unique perspectives. So I'm thrilled. This is our first try at this. So hi, podcast listeners, be patient as we're figuring it out. And I thought I would start. And this question I did not share with all of you for a reason, because I wanted you to just this is sort of a rapid fire question. So you have a pen and paper. I don't want you to be influenced by each other's. So the first question is for right now. Thinking about the film, good luck to you, Leo Grande, in one word. Write down the first word that comes to your mind. Go. Okay. I think most of people are done. You're already done. Wow, you guys are fast. Okay. If you want to, why don't we all just we can all see each other, podcast listeners. So I'm gonna ask you all to put up your word. Hold up your word to the camera and see if we can read it. Okay. Refreshing, bold, intimate. Mariann, what was yours? I didn't see yours.
Grand.
Grand. Okay. My word was gratitude. Bold, refreshing. Cindy, what was yours again?
Intimate.
Intimate. Okay. Yeah. Perfect words. Perfect words to capture the variety of emotions and feelings that I had during it. So I kind of want to go around the word around again and ask each of you. And this one I did give you a little time to think about. In just a couple of sentences, share with me what were your initial thoughts, your impressions, what stuck with you, but keep it just a couple of sentences, just a little bit. So I'm going to put myself on mute to hear from Sandy. Let's start with you again.
Yeah, well, I suppose my first thought was about bloody time. It was just so brilliant to see something from our generation being represented, because so often we don't see ourselves on screen in those lead roles. So it was so refreshing. And yeah, about bloody time.
Excellent. I agree with you wholeheartedly. Cindy, what were some of your initial thoughts?
I would say it was it was different. I think that's it. There was such my word for this was intimate, and I feel like I was in the room with like real people. I didn't feel like they were pretending or acting. They were very, very natural, and it just seemed very different to me, just different. I went into it thinking, okay, I know what this movie is about, right? I haven't read reviews, but I conceptually have an idea, and it went in a direction I didn't anticipate at all.
I agree. I think intimate was such a great way to describe it. It was very much like you were a fly on the wall. Mariann, what are your thoughts?
Okay, I'm going to harken back to the word that I used, which is grand. I thought the whole experience as I was watching it was grand. It was celebratory. It celebrated an older woman in a way that she was just beginning to celebrate herself. So we were taken on that journey, and I just loved it. It was yummy to me. And as an actress, because I get a lot of scripts and things that have been asked to audition for, some of which I have turned down. A lot of the characters that I read for, because I am 74 years old, the character is dowdy or dumpy, or she is crazy, or she's a curmudgeon. She's frail, she's feeble. There's always a problem that she has to overcome, or else she is like the sidebar. She's sort of like an anecdote to the main characters. And this Emma Thompson got to be grand. She got to be a full expression of an older woman. And that's why I just loved it.
Amen. I agree with you completely. Eleni.
Oh, it's so interesting, Mariann, that you said yummy. Yummy was sprung to my mind as well. So did the word juicy, juicy. I there was this delicious discomfort that I felt. It was a familiar delicious discomfort, these intimate moments and these revelations and this willingness to just step into these moments of vulnerability that opened the doors to this kind of juicy nature that we have, that uh, that the beauty of being able to pull back the curtain and say, this yummy stuff, to borrow Mariann's word, this yummy stuff doesn't go away. It's there. Hello, you know? No matter what you out there may think, it's alive and kicking in here, you know?
Amen, sister. Amen.
And I just
Yeah,
want to say
I
one
have-
more
Can
thing.
we all unmute and give a amen to the amen
Yes.
corner? Can we shout it out and say hallelujah?
Absolutely.
Yeah.
And feel free to jump in. I'm just trying to give us a little bit of chance to kind of, deal with it. But if you feel a desire to jump in with something you just heard or it resonates, of course, share. Wow. I have to tell you, I love the cross section here, because I think, and for people who are listening, I think this is the part that sometimes gets missed in what the industry sometimes fears about taking these risks, that maybe there won't be an audience or people won't resonate, or and just, we all have very similar, like, first of all, more of this please. It absolutely resonated with me in so many ways. And it was a wonderful experience to just go on this journey with these characters. So I love all of the things that you all just shared, because it was all these different pieces of it that were experiences for all of us. Yeah, Mariann?
And as long as we're talking about yummy, can we talk about the young man, the actor that she got to play with? He was yummy. And what I loved about it, not since Harold and Maude have I seen, a May-December romance where the woman was much older than the man, that I found totally believable. There was when he was looking at her and said, uh, that he thought she was sexy, that she was, I could see it wasn't bullshit. He was really appreciating her as a woman.
Yeah.
And the age, while it made a difference, but it didn't make a difference, if you know what I mean. I mean,
Yes.
I was aware of it, but at the end of the day, they were two people who were able to nurture each other and be there for each other. And I thought that was just delightful.
Yeah, I'd like to share. My husband and I were sunning ourselves down at the beach about 10 minutes before I came up for our discussion. And he and I, of course, were talking about this in anticipation. And he made a comment that I wanted to share with you guys. He said, women really underestimate how beautiful they are to men. And he goes, and it has nothing really to do with your age or your appearance or anything other than who you are. It's the essence of you that makes you beautiful, not your age, not the clothes you're wearing, or it's your personality. It's you that makes, he said, men love their women for a reason, and it's not the physical. It's not always it certainly helps, but I thought I'd share that with you guys.
Wow.
Cindy, you have the benefit of being in a long-term relationship. And I will say that when a man is in love with a woman, he looks at her through the eyes of love. So he is going to, it's not just what he sees in front of him, but it's all of his imagination and what he brings into his feelings and his vision for you. I am a single woman, and I will say that because primarily through the media, the dating scene for older women is different because it's kind of hard to. Um, I find a lot of men who are my age are looking for younger women,
Mhm.
and we have this image, and looking for the next bright shiny object. So I think in a relationship that's had a chance to a really good solid relationship, which it sounds like yours is. I'm so jealous. But anyway, it's yeah, that's wonderful. But I will say that I think the media is doing women and men a disservice by the way women are over sexualized, as if that's all we have to offer.
Mhm. Oh, I agree with you 100%, Mariann. I absolutely do. How many movies have we watched where the aging star, male star, somehow managed to catch the eye of the most beautiful, 20 something on the planet? Really?
Yeah.
Hey,
And the truth of
Elaine,
the matter, for a man with substance, I would say, once they start talking to someone their daughter's age, it becomes, what am I doing? What am I doing?
yeah, Elaine, you had some
Yeah,
thoughts.
there are two things I want to say. One is as we were talking, I was reminded of a friend of mine who by a bisexual woman who many years ago got involved briefly with a woman that she met who was much older than she was, and she said to me, "Oh, if you could only have seen her body, it was full of beauty. She had scars from giving birth. She had stretch marks. She was absolutely lived in the most glorious way." I thought her body was so beautiful. And at the time, I remember thinking, would a man say this about another woman's body, about a woman's body, right? And my own husband, Cindy, when we were watching this movie together, he loved it as much as I did. And he said something fairly similar. And I thought, holy cow, And again, reflecting on what Mariann said, maybe indeed that's true, that there's that sense of, look, I love you for everything that you are, right? But my husband said to me, I think that, and maybe he said because I'm an older man, but I look at women and see all of them. I love women who are older, he said, and I don't really quite understand wanting to be with a woman who is, a quarter of my age. And so I appreciated hearing that. So that's one aspect of this thing. The other thing I wanted to say was I will absolutely admit to being in that bed with the two of them, kind of moment by moment by moment, and thinking there was the wonder and of the slow unveiling on both parts, that drew me in. And it was I as I was watching the movie, I thought they are taking forever in these scenes. They played them out in front of us like a play. And it gave air and breadth and time for feelings to evolve and grow. And for us, I think, as an audience, to experience depth and breadth of feeling with them, which we don't see very much. You know, there was a whole panoply of feeling and expression and movement of energy that we don't see very much in movies. In my estimation, we don't see that willingness to trust time and let it just unroll.
Hold your thought, Mariann, because I want to bring Sandy in because she's been sitting there listening, and I want to hear your thoughts as well, Sandy.
Yeah, well, I'm loving listening to everyone, and you're just so right, Nina, because it was like being in an intimate theater watching a play. And I love that. And like you said, Marianne, it was so believable. Like when he traced down along her neck, we were there, and it was believable, and it was ageless. And the thing I found though really interesting, just before that the kiss and the trace down her neck. She asked if she was a disappointment. And it was so funny with my partner and I. We both had this same knee-jerk shock reaction of I heard him go, oh, in a way of, how can a woman with all that lived experience ever be a disappointment? And it just made my heart overflow that this amazing bloke was going, oh, because that's what we want from older men. We want older men that celebrate women of our age and all ages. We want the men that have that vision to see women as timeless. But for me, I was just like, oh, I love that she was so vulnerable to ask if she was a disappointment. But I also just want these rose colored glasses where we never, ever doubt ourselves or think that as we age.
Yeah, I totally agree. Mariann, you had some thoughts and some additional things you wanted to bring back in.
Yeah, I want to go back to what a lady was saying. Can we give a shout out to foreplay? Because that was so, it was nuanced and subtle, and I think that's where some of the juiciness comes in, because there was a slow build and there wasn't a lot of pumping and jumping. It was the stroking and so much of it was with their clothes on. They were fully clothed, and it was in the language, it was in the conversation. It that is where a lot of the yumminess came in. And when she asked, if she was a disappointment, I kind of felt that that little stab in my chest, because when I worked as a hypnotherapist, I worked with women in their late 40s, early 50s suffering from depression. We as a culture have been hypnotized into believing that women lose value and social and sexual currency as we get older. That is the macrocosm. Now, in the microcosm, within our individual relationships, we can have that conversation and that discovery. And maybe that is not true for the individual. But for the culture, we need to address this. And a lot of that is through film and television. I mean, look at what we're talking about now, about how this movie affected us. And as you said, Sandy, we need more of them. Why are we so, I mean, it's like we're starving and finally, oh, somebody gave us a cupcake. Well, can we have a meal, please? Can we have a steak and some vegetables and some potatoes and a salad? I mean, my God. Okay, so I'm going to stop now. But
Yeah.
that was delicious.
I totally agree with everything that you said. And I think that was one of the things, and I'm going to sort of lead with the next question about one of the parts that surprised me. I will say what surprised me was the open vulnerability of both characters. And they allowed us the journey to, for her, I mean, there were so many things that I, as an older woman, resonated moments of it. Not every piece of it, but there were those moments, like you said, am I a disappointment? Oh, that gut punch, because we've all thought that once upon a time, or that it's that little voice in our head. But even the intimacy and the journey that he took, through his discovery of this experience with her, that collaboration of intimacy and vulnerability. He came in with all this swagger, but almost like her vulnerability opened up his. It was sort of an interesting journey. So the intimacy and the vulnerability that both characters took, the journey of discovery, was not what I was expecting. And not that I had pre-expectations, but I didn't know what it was about. I mean, I knew the concept, but that was a genuinely a beautiful surprise, not a ooh surprise, like, oh my God, to everybody's point, can we please have more of this? Because it was so fulfilling and rich. It was rich. So I wonder, does anybody want to share? Was there something that surprised when you thought about something in particular that surprised any of you? Anybody want to raise your hand to go first on that one? Okay, start with Cindy, then we'll go to Eleni.
Yeah. For me, the surprise was how Leo Grande presented himself and how he behaved, even throughout the entire movie. He was a very special man, frankly. I don't know whether, in the very beginning, when Nancy, sits down with her list and says, here are the things that I want to check off tonight, or today. And he was always very complimentary and very nice and understanding of her. So in the beginning, I was like, is just that his shtick, right? Because he's a sex worker and that's his shtick, and he, is nice. But as time wore on, it became evident this is who this person is. No matter what it was that went on to bring him to this moment or this relationship or this client, he's a special man. And I wonder, if the character had been less of a special man, how that movie would have worked. I don't think it would have.
That's a great point. Eleni, you had a couple of things, so please join.
That's such a huge point. I again thought that as well, thinking I was surprised by him at various times. I was surprised by his vulnerability, and I was surprised. This is going to sound odd since the movie did have a trajectory, but I was surprised and delighted by the willingness to hang in there because they met again and again, in spite of the discomfort and that they hung in there and dug in, and so I have the one big glorious surprise for me, as in made me just leap off my bed. I was watching it in bed, was when they gleefully ran into the room at the end of the movie and just went at each other.
Yeah.
I was really actually quite taken by surprise because of the playfulness of it. That was the moment that really, that shift was so gigantic, but it was so earned. Then in retrospect, I realized, well, actually, it shouldn't have surprised me because they took the time to get there, right? But the surprise was just, I think, just how gleefully they leaped in, right? Oh,
yeah. And what a beautiful word to say about that moment. That moment was earned for all of us. Like we were on the journey with them. So you kind of like, oh yes, it was a great word there. Oh, Mariann, yeah. What surprised you?
You know, we have to give props to the writer, to the storyteller, because the way she peeled away the layers and she went back and forth. So we didn't find out his story till about halfway, 3/4 of the way through the movie. And what I thought was interesting, I thought, he was really good at customer service. you know, he I thought, did he get trained at Trader Joe's or something? Because he was good at his job. And I took from that he found, especially when you found out about his backstory and how his mother felt about him, he took great pride in his job. And also when you found out about how he felt about sex, he didn't have any negative projections on the fact that he was a sex worker. He took pride in what it was that he did. So I think that was important. And he wanted to satisfy his clients. And then when we find out more about him, the term wounded healer came to mind because it was his wounds that allowed him to really connect, I think, with Emma Thompson's character. And at the end, you're right, the earned ending, I think that they realized that they had both helped in healing each other, and then they were just like, yes, let's celebrate, and they went at it. So it was a very good storytelling.
Oh, yeah. Sandy, I don't know if you want to join in with the surprise thing, but it leads, tell me, because what she just said leads us into my next question, but I want you to sort of have any thoughts you'd like to share about what surprised you.
Yeah, well, spoiler alert, spoiler alert. So anyone that hasn't seen the movie yet, just fast forward through the next 30 seconds. I found myself feeling disappointed at the start with her disappointment with her age and her longing for a return to her youth. And I had to get over that as a viewer. Then, when she finally has that elusive orgasm, and she has had it not through Leo, but through her own means, that to me, like Mariann, you were saying about her blooming, that was the blooming moment of then just, embracing and stepping into our age and saying, we own this and we have nowhere to go but up. And that for me was, I guess, maybe not so much a surprise, but the thing I was hoping for. And I think I would have been heartbroken if she hadn't gotten to that climax. And I don't mean like climax of orgasm, I mean climax of discovery of, this is it. And yeah, this is our time to shine.
Jump in, Eleni. Go ahead.
Yeah.
You can all take go ahead.
I just have to comment on that. I so resonate with that. I thought that was absolutely perfect to give her the pleasure of giving herself the pleasure. That sense of ownership of pleasure and appetite. There is so much shame around that. We have, I think, as women, we are so weighted. I mean, look at the words that are bandied about when we're young. You slut, God forbid you should be sexual and have those feelings welling up, right? And somehow or other, we're supposed to shut down even further as we get older, apparently, if you watch if you watch what's out there typically. But here we had someone who just unapologetically, and that was the word too that sprung to mind, unapologetically allowed pleasure to be front and central without shame, just being, there was an openness to that whole scene too. Like, look at me. Isn't this wonderful? That I cried in that scene. It moved me that much.
Mm-hmm. The thing that I would add to that too is I remember thinking when the movie was over, how brave Nancy was to even be in that space on that first day. The fact that it even occurred to her that she could take matters into her own hands, no pun intended, but literally, right? She could reach out to a sex worker and could achieve the thing that in 30 years of marriage she was never able to achieve, right? Just getting her to make that connection and to show up is an amazing feat in and of itself, right? But she knew that this was a good thing and it was worth the effort. And I don't know what conversation she may have ever had with her husband, but she knew she was missing out on something. And even in her 60s, she knew it was something good and was worth pursuing.
So I want to pick up on something that Mariann said about, props to the writer. And this brings us beautifully to the other question that I asked you guys to consider. This was written and directed by two different women, two women in their 40s. I wonder what your thoughts are about, would it have been told differently if it was if written or directed by a man? And if so, tell me what you think. What did it becoming from a women screenwriter and a woman director bring to it? And what do you think would have been differently if it was, if either of those pieces were a male? So, does anybody want to jump in? I have lots of thoughts, but I'm going to allow you guys to share. Okay, Mariann, why don't you put your mic on and join us?
Okay, I think because it was two women, a woman screenwriter and a woman director, they took their time. They took their
Yes.
time. I think that a man might be a little bit, had he directed it, might be a little bit less like, well, let's get to the action. There's not enough action. There's not enough going on. But I I feel that that because of a woman's sensibility, she they allowed the story to breathe and to take all the time that they needed, and without having um, a big explosion or something. I was just about taking the time, and I know we're going to continue to talking about this, but I would like to say, as the lone woman of color here, nothing was really said about the fact that it was an interracial relationship, and I thought I didn't I thought of him as being Irish more so, and the fact that he was biracial, and the fact that I don't think race ever played into it, and I'm glad that they didn't go down that direction, because it was totally unnecessary, and that wasn't really part of the story. And what I gathered, because they gave like little clues, little hints, what I gathered was that he was Ireland, and I figured his mother was probably Irish and his father was probably an immigrant or something, and he was raised by his mother, and there was just something that in this actor's portrayal, again, to that wounded healer, there was something that I found about his sensitivity as a young man, but he was wise beyond his years. And I think that's what really made it work.
Absolutely. I agree with you completely. What are the thoughts about the women's point of view about this? I mean, and also as a director, Eleni, you look like you're about to raise your hand. You want to unmute yourself. There you go.
I read an article in the New York Times about talking, really, there was an interview with Emma Thompson around this movie, and she talked about how much she connected with this character because she had always looked at herself in a disparaging manner when it came to her body. That she just felt that she didn't have the ideal body. She never played parts that allowed her to show that body. She didn't do nude scenes, and so I think that when I'm going to make this judgment call, but there's just sort of a guess, I should say, that one of the reasons she was attracted to the script was that it was written by a woman and directed by a woman, that women who had the sensitivity to um, allow someone like Emma Thompson, the actress, to explore these complex feelings verbally as well as physically on the screen. There was so much conversation that occurred, which I felt was very female, you know, needing to talk it through, talk it through, even to the degree that at one point there was so much talking that you kind of looked down and went, well, we have a little problem now, but but that no, there was almost that notion of going back to the notion of foreplay. There's that sense of time taken to develop something, and conversation as well as physicality. I mean, in terms of the breadth of that. And so I feel, and I feel like these women, I mean, we've been there. We've all been there. And we don't have to be in our later years to experience the shame and the sense of, less than with our bodies. I'm from the moment practically that we move into adolescence, we've been trained into thinking that we're less than somehow. And so I think that the women who created this brought that sensibility to it. Those incredibly painful revelations that come from knowing this. And I'm going to just go out on a limb and say that I don't think that a man could have done it to that degree. I'm just saying it. I've thought about this question since I saw it on your little list of questions. I don't think they could have done it to the nuanced degree.
Right. That's kind
That
of what I
occurred.
was thinking. I think there was a sensibility in these characters, especially in for the Nancy character, that I think could only have been pulled out by women who resonated or understood some of where she was coming from, if that makes sense. I think a man could appreciate some of it, but I don't think they could have I don't think they would have chosen to approach it from that point of view. That would be my thinking. I just think there were certain nuances in it that I don't think a man would have brought certain little details that were very resonant and very that just those tiny little moments is just those tiny little things, even in the way they I wish we had the director, because like I wonder how many little pieces were in on the script or something that Emma thought of in the moment or the director thought of. And one of the moments, like at the very, very, very beginning when she's getting ready, she changes her shoes. She
Yeah.
takes her sensible shoes on and puts her heels on. And I would think like that tiny little detail is something that like matters in establishing what is happening here. Like that is something that I was like, yeah, so every woman in the world got that moment when she put on the heel, when she switched her shoes before he showed up. So that was something that I think was so intimate, but a detail that might miss. So please, who wants Cindy? I know you had your hand up for this one, I think. So
Yeah, I mean, I think we've pretty much talked about, everything. And one of the things that, I hesitate to say, well, men can't, just as I'm hesitant to say women can't, right? But the truth of the matter is, unless it's lived experience for you, you don't have the insight. You just don't, right? I mean, there are things that occur in men's living and being that I couldn't possibly understand emotionally what's happening inside them when it's going on. Just like a man can't know what it's like to birth a baby because they'll never be able to do that. Never, ever, ever. And so that's why, to me, this work says we need more writers and directors who are women and have the woman's lived experience and can put it out there, because that's what's real, not a man's perspective of it, because they haven't been in a woman's body.
absolutely. And those stories matter, which is one of the things that we were talking about. And Sandy, please jump in if you had some thoughts about that, because you're also a writer.
Well, emerging and the baby writer, but we're getting there. But I just all the way through, I kept thinking, thank you, Jane Campion, for proving that slow burn is viable. Because I love the slow burn, and I love the slow burn where you could actually feel that it was a female director and a female writer. And as an expat, I didn't actually do a lot of my research or due diligence before I watched it. And I kept thinking, despite all of the British repression that was just so beautifully portrayed, I just kept thinking, this has an Aussie feel, this has an Aussie beat. It just, some of the angles and just some of the pace. And then I discovered it was Sophie Hyde, and it was an Australian director. And I was like, oh, how did I think that all the way through? But it was one of those things as an expat. I loved that mix of a British writer and an Aussie director.
Absolutely. I think there was so many pieces of it that um there was definitely sort of what again my perception of the British sensibility. We're only seeing it from what I wasn't raised that way, but some of that was sort of came. I mean, my family came from Ireland, so some of that old school stuff, European influence is here, right? We all have. Some of us came from that. Um, I thought, one of the words that often people keep saying is brave, brave, brave. I hear brave. And that was for sure brave, but I was so I want to say how joyful I was to hear that that wasn't their immediate words, because I think it's, yes, it's brave. Okay, it is. But there were so many more pieces of this beyond that. And the richness and the experience that we're all that so many waves of emotion. I mean, I was on such a roller coaster with it so many times, like those moments of when there was those gut punches where I'm crying, and then absolute humor watching, seeing myself in something that's so ridiculous that I would absolutely could catch myself doing. And then the journey to this discovery before it ends. um the nuances of that and the importance of bringing women to the table, both in front of the camera and the writing room and behind the camera. um, it matters because how they will tell the story, how they will pace the story, as you've all said, is different. And it's not saying that, to your point, that a man couldn't take this script and direct us this story, but there were pieces from the point of view that they would just approach the storytelling differently. And this is why I wanted to do the podcast, because the more stories and the more points of view and the more various ways we see these things, it gives us all permission to start to expand our own lens of ourselves. I mean, and to realize how much of it we've been influenced because we don't see it. There's been one or two perspectives always showing us. And to go back to the shame part of it that Eleni talked about so much early on, how much of that was just, I don't think we start that way, but it is very, very early on our life cycles, to saying there's shame in this. And we're men, it's like, oh, boys will be boys and la la la. And it's just, but so there's this disconnect there. And we're until we start allowing more stories to be told, to explore and break those barriers, break those paradigms open a little bit. The minute you see those moments, it just gives you that little more permission to question, to ask, to explore for yourself. At least that was my experience. Go ahead, Cindy.
So as we were just talking about this, and something popped into my head, and I want to try to articulate it the right way. So in the beginning, when Nancy says to Leo, I've never had an orgasm, I have to tell you, I was like, you poor, like my answer, my immediate reaction was, oh my God. To me, that was unimaginable, right? I was so sad for her, right? But then it occurs to me that in some ways, this movie is like that part of The Wizard of Oz when the fairy godmother says to Dorothy, but you've had the power to go home all along, dear. And she clicks her heels. It's the same kind of thing. I mean, Nancy had the power all along, but she's too ashamed to explore that, or whatever the reasons. But she always could have had an orgasm. She always could have had a good sexual experience. She just didn't know she could, wouldn't allow herself to do that.
It was really true. Go ahead, Mariann. Yeah.
I'm going to get actory for a moment. There is a term called being in the moment. Felt those actors to always be in the moment and and they were allowed to be authentically themselves. I read an article that said that in rehearsal, that the director and the crew, everyone had to get naked for, so that everyone would feel comfortable with that, which then allowed the actors, when they shot it, to be fully present and in the moment, to the point that at the very beginning, I love Emma Thompson as an actress, and there's certain things that she does that that are very Emma Thompson-y. And I actually felt that as an actor, I don't know how it was shot, but if it was shot in sequentially, there was a little nervousness that I felt from the actress that she was giving to her character. And she allowed herself to do that and not try to cover. I just felt that and I think that that added to the believability, because as they went on, the character got more comfortable, but I felt Emma got a little bit more comfortable too. I could feel her, because sometimes she gets a little, and she kind of calmed down and she went there. And I thought that for me, uh, that just made the whole movie more human and accessible, because these are actors, but the actors are real people and they were in that experience together.
Well, just so you know, I've actually read and listened to some interviews, and it is my understanding that they did actually film this sequentially for that reason. They chose to tell the story. And let me just tell you, they had 19 days to shoot this film. This was done in 19 days. For anybody who doesn't understand that, in the filmmaking world, that is an intense schedule to keep when you're doing that many pages of dialogue in a day. Because you're having to change lighting and set these things up. And even though it was considered a simple set, because it's mostly shot in one room, I mean, if you think about it, they have to, the very first scene starts in the middle of the day and goes into the evening. So from a lighting thing, they had to reset all of that throughout the whole thing. So it was, yeah, in order to accomplish what they did. And they just and I did read that they actually they did have rehearsals, and they all kind of they'd rehearse naked just to explore each other and develop that trust with each other. And I think and I'm not sure, but I think the cinematographer might have been also involved with some of that. So I just thought, again, what a remarkable creative experience and how they approached it, right? The creativity in this storytelling was beautiful. And I don't know, I just think everything about it for me was, I was hoping so much to want to, like, you know what I mean? Because I kind of knew what it was about, and I heard about Emma Thompson, and 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 for them to have successfully executed this beautiful story as well as they did, I hope that more producers and writers and directors and people funding and greenlighting projects will recognize that there is an audience for this. There's a lot of us out there, and it has value, it has richness. And at a time when, in these days when there is so much angst and frustration, to see intimacy and kindness and vulnerability and connection, it was sort of like a warm bath for me, just to just escape in this story, even though it was an emotional roller coaster. But for me, it was that connection, that human connection. Man, we need a lot. I hope we see a lot more of it. Those are just some of my thoughts, personally. Who has have you recommended it yet? Are you gonna recommend it? Okay, Eleni, jump in. Come on.
I just recommended it this weekend. I was at a conference and I spent time with two women. We went early so we could spend time together for a couple days and mastermind and talk and reconnect. And I said you have to see this movie if you haven't seen it. And one of the women had seen it and the other one hadn't. So we were really careful not to sort of reveal the whole thing. But as I said to them, you have to see this movie because you'll see yourself in this movie. Both of the women that I'm referring to, my pals, are of women of a certain age, and we were talking about the fact of that there are things that occur in our age group that no one has talked about. No one reveals. No one lets us know that we might have technical problems down in our nether regions. Sandy's nodding. But that there might be issues that we become ashamed of, or that can add to shame or discomfort, or these kinds of things. It kicked off a whole big conversation, and so I'm recommending it because I think it's not only a brilliant movie, but it sparks conversation and connection. And I think couples should watch this movie of any gender. This is a beautiful movie about more than nakedness. It's about revealing and tenderness and vulnerability, because as my acting teacher, Michael Howard, used to say in New York, being naked is not so brave, not as brave as you might think, but allowing people to really, allowing yourself to be really seen, allowing yourself to be there fully is a whole other ball of wax. And
That's for sure.
movie. Yeah.
Sandy, you were nodding a lot of what she was saying. Go ahead, jump in.
Well, yeah, I just at every stage, you're just so absolutely right. And yeah, and there are things that can make intimacy a little bit more complicated for us as we age. We might have dryness or sometimes maybe mobility issues, or our knees don't quite cooperate as well as they used to. But the thing that I loved that just makes me say to everyone, you've got to watch this, is even regardless of age, but especially of age in the same breath, we are worthy and we are deserving. We are so deserving of pleasure and of self acceptance and self celebration. And that was my big takeaway, I guess, is, the timelessness of our worthiness.
Amen. 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 Um, well, I want to thank you all. I'm not going to, I think we could probably go on and talk about this movie I could talk about it for endless amount of time, but I think, I think I'm going to let us just sort of end with that because, well, unless anybody has one or two little final thoughts they want to say, but I'm so grateful for your insights, for sharing this conversation with me. You each brought your own perspectives and language to things that I was experiencing. So I am so grateful for all of your insights and how you were able to articulate it. Because some of them I was like, yes, yes, and those words escaped me at times. So I am so grateful for anybody out there who has not seen it. Hope you listened to the spoiler alert before we started. I'm hoping that everybody who's listening to this has already seen it and just listening it after the fact. But please, Hollywood, please, media, please, everybody. We need more writers. We need more of this. Like I said, about time. But let's more, please, all of it. And these beautiful, I'm excited to watch more about that young actor, Daryl McCormack. He was a beautiful, brilliant young actor. We're excited to see where his career takes him. And Dame Emma Thompson, I mean, honestly, is the woman, whew, she just continues to, grow and expand her talents, and I'm so grateful that she's finding these projects and diving in. We need more of them. Any last thoughts, ladies? Mariann?
I will just say that as an actress, I am available to play his mother or her best friend. That's it. I'm just putting it out there into the universe.
Hey, I just want to say that this has been a delight to be involved in this conversation with everyone.
Thanks,
I
Cindy.
say the same. Here, here. And what a joy to be able to actually just talk frankly about these things, without apology, and just enjoy the experience of diving in together like this. Thank you for the opportunity, Elisa.
Well, my pleasure. And Sandy?
Yeah, this was such a great conversation, and I loved being at the table. And I think that we need a sequel where we have Mariann's journey. Then I love that. We'll have to create a character for you. Yes, I love that. We have Nancy's best friend going on her own journey and even go a bit deeper. I reckon that could be amazing.
Great idea.
Oh, well, I agree. I think
Hey,
I would love
Sandy,
to
go
see.
ahead and write it for me.
Thank you, ladies. I encourage you, if you haven't had a chance to check out each other's episodes and learn more about each other. Each of you are such remarkable women in your own right, in your own talents. So check each other out. I mean, you probably already know a little bit about each other, but claim the stage. Check out Elaine's fabulous book. It is a remarkable book. There it is. She's showing it, those of us, but I will have some more information about your bios in the show notes for people who are listening. But it's a great book, and we talked about it a lot in her episode. And it actually, each of you had an interesting way of moving me forward in this journey of this podcast. Mariann kicked my ass and just got me to record the first episode. And then Elaine's book got me to stop procrastinating, because it was like her tools. I'm like, oh my God, I'm crossing it out, going, I'm on number 7. And Cindy, she's been a colleague of mine in a whole other world that wasn't from my acting background. And I knew that she had, quote, retired and started a new career. And Sandy reached out, just found the podcast and emailed me. So it's been this amazing journey with all of you. And I am so grateful that you came and joined me for this discussion. Thanks, amazing women in my life. Thank you. There's More to Our Story podcast was created by me, Elisa Gallagher, your host, is produced by Brian Richards. Theme music is by Andy Littlewood. And until next time, please follow the podcast wherever you choose to listen.